It was 2 weeks ago that I had the chance to share with you the story about the healing season in my life. The night we had the praise service, I was honored to share that with you, that the healing season that God had done in my life. And I can see now that God's healing season in my life was like soil. Think about your garden, or a garden that someone that you know has had at their home in your life. And the healing season in my life was the soil of the garden. And God went and took 5 foundational spiritual habits and planted that into the soil of my healing. And tonight I want to talk to you about one of those particular acts of spiritual habits that was put into the soil of my healing. And specifically, it is the spiritual habit of Sabbath rest. And I can't think of anything else in the Scripture that needs a PR agent as much as the Sabbath does, because it's been my experience over the last 7 to 8 years that, and I'm talking about myself now, when I started off feeling led of the Lord to take a Sabbath, I misunderstood what Sabbath was, and I misapplied what Sabbath was. And here I am. I probably have it in my prayer journal somewhere, but it's been at least 7, 8 years that I have been on this journey of trying to understand what God has for us in Sabbath rest. And it's interesting to note, I recently heard a speaker talk, and I hadn't noticed this before, but he said that keeping the Sabbath is one of the 10 commandments, but it's the only commandment that starts with the word remember. You've got the 4 commandments that deal with how we interact and relate to the Lord, and we've got the group of commandments that deal with our relationships as human beings. But in the Bible, where it talks about the commandment regarding the Sabbath, it says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And sometimes we've changed that. Even I've said it already tonight, keep the Sabbath. No, we're to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. And we've gotten mixed up on that and misunderstood on that. And that has been what my journey has been like, which is to understand we are to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And I'm just going to share with you what my journey with that has been like. When I started out many years ago and first began even thinking about the Sabbath, I thought that you had to act like you were at a funeral all day. That was my concept of the Sabbath. You had to be real serious and real quiet and act like you were at God's funeral all day. And so that is so wrong. And that's what my journey has taught me. So here's what I've learned. Because this isn't preaching tonight, this is testifying tonight. I'm just a guy up here talking to you about my own journey with the Sabbath. The first thing that I'd like to share with you is that the Sabbath is not a standalone thing, all right? The Sabbath is part of something bigger that God is doing. And the something bigger that God is doing is a part of the rhythm of life that He designed for you and me. You see, God has this design for our life. And if you remember the story of Adam and Eve, that He gave Adam and Eve both work and rest. Okay? Adam and Eve were given the Garden of Eden to care for. They were the caretakers of the Garden of Eden. They were given work to do by God. And they were supposed to do that work for 6 days. And they had this 7th day of rest, the Sabbath day. But there was this balance of their life to work and rest. And I observe a lot of people in the world. I look around at a lot of people's lives, and in some way, shape, or form, their balance of work and rest is out of whack, and they're paying a price for it spiritually. Some people don't rest. They take rest, and there's no rhythm of work and rest in their life, and they take out rest. And so they pay the price for that emotionally, spiritually, physically. Other people do not work as they should. Other people, and I'm not talking about having a job where you get paid. I'm talking about having work in your life, including work for the Lord, but they don't work at all. And they're just as much out of balance as people who don't rest. You see, God's got this big picture for us that we are healthy and well when we have the right balance of work and rest in our life. And the Sabbath is the rest piece of that rhythm of work and rest in our life. So not only do I need to take a day of Sabbath rest, but I need to be actively engaged in work the other days, to be living by God's design for my life. And I always take my Sabbath in accordance with the biblical design of time. Now, if you read the creation story, one of the things that we kind of pass over, I'm just going to read the first day, okay? And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And listen to this. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. There was evening, and there was morning the first day. And that's why, if you've ever noticed that, for instance, a Jewish person, someone who's faithful to the Seventh-day Adventist Church is another example, but their Sabbath begins at sundown on Friday and goes through sundown on Saturday. They go evening, morning, they have that rhythm of a day. And so that's what I do. I try to keep that rhythm so that when I get my work done on Sunday afternoon, it used to be when I went to the nursing home and had my service with the people there at Waterford, that when I got done with that and I got home about 4 o'clock, that's when my Sabbath started. And it went through 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon. And I've really gotten into my life that pattern of thinking. So, in other words, for me, it's evening now. This is a part of Friday for me. This is evening, and I'm thinking about that, and I'll go home and I'll sleep, and I'll get up, and that rhythm of days I've worked into my life where there's evening, then there's morning. And in the evening I get myself mentally and emotionally prepared for what comes the next morning and afternoon. And that's become the cycle of my life. And I find it very natural, I guess is the word, very natural to think of days as evening, then morning and afternoon, that the day goes from sundown to sundown, as opposed to another way of looking at it. We look at it much differently. All right. Next thing, Sabbath is more than about physical rest. All right, it's a big part of it, but there's also the rest of trusting. Okay, so taking Sabbath means that I trust God's provision in my life. I don't work that day. I don't earn anything that day. And it shows that God's in charge of my daily bread. God's in charge of my needs. And I can take a day off and trust Him to give me my daily bread, even though I am not physically laboring at a job or in some fashion for it. It tells me that I trust God for my daily bread. It's also a form of trusting God's authority and sovereignty in my life. So I trust Him with my world. I trust Him with the world. Okay? He's capable of handling anything that's going to happen in the world from Sunday night at 4 o'clock to Monday night at 4 o'clock. I don't have to be involved with it. Okay? His sovereignty, I just trust in His sovereignty. I trust in His goodness. The Sabbath is about trust as much as it is anything else. The trust of, if we can use Charles' words, that God's got this. Okay? That's Charles saying, God's got this. And that's what the Sabbath is all about, is God's got this. Okay, so let me share where I'm at as of today, because God is constantly teaching me new things about keeping the Sabbath. And so 6 months from now, I might have different answers for you than I have today, because the answers that I have for you are dramatically different than a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So I just want to share with you how I remember the Sabbath. Okay? The first part is rest. And when I say rest, I mean physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest. So you hit 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and I let myself be tired. Because if I'm tired on 4 o'clock on Sunday night, then I know I've done my work this previous 6 days. And so I just let myself be tired on Sunday night and feel the fatigue of having labored in God's design for 6 days. On Monday morning, there are absolutely no alarm clocks. Alarm clocks are not allowed on the Sabbath morning. It's whenever your body wakes you up, and hopefully the dog doesn't wake you up, but because that sometimes happens. But the ideal Sabbath morning is when you just wake up because you wake up, not because your head is full of stuff, not because the alarm clock rings, but because it's just you got enough sleep and you woke up. And then Monday afternoon naps are highly encouraged. Even if you've had 9 hours or 10 hours of sleep the night before, if you can sit it down in the chair and nod off and take a nap on Monday afternoon, that's the holiest thing that you can be doing at that period of time. And so rest is a big part of it, because, again, we're talking about God's rhythm for our lives of work and rest, work and rest. The second thing is that the Sabbath is a day for feasting. Now, I'm not talking about the way we feast at Thanksgiving or Christmas, okay, where there's the pressure to make a big meal, but I'm talking about fun things, okay? Fun things like having chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast, okay? That makes the Sabbath special. I always have a bowl of ice cream on the Sabbath, okay? Always have a bowl of ice cream, because I love ice cream, and I have it very occasionally, but that's just a part of making the Sabbath special. And however food is special for you, because it means we're enjoying the provision of God, and we can take the time to really enjoy it in ways that we don't on other days. I enjoy a bowl of ice cream more on the Sabbath than I do on a work day. I do, and it's just, again, you don't want to create a lot of work for yourself, or like me, it wouldn't be fair to create work for Kay, because she's the one who does the cooking, but just to have fun things to remember the goodness of our Father in heaven. Then I believe that it's always important to have some corner of your day be reflection, okay? To be reflection, where there's a time for you to look inside of your own heart. I think that's one of the purposes of the Sabbath too, because we go on our work days and we're focused on our to-do list. And quite honestly, on work days, I don't look inside myself as often or as deeply as I probably should, because I've got all these other things. But that's exactly what the Sabbath is for. The pace of the Sabbath is so that you can take the time to step aside with God and look deeply inside of your own heart. And I want to share with you these words from Psalm 139. Psalm 139, it's the last two verses 23 and 24. It says there, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." And so, one of the most powerful tools that God uses in our lives is self-awareness. Self-awareness is seeing ourselves as we actually are. Okay? God sees us as we actually are. we don't always see ourselves as we actually are. But there's these beautiful moments that come together when we see ourselves as we actually are, as we see ourselves as God sees us. And those are powerful moments. And when we have one of those moments, that's when we surrender ourselves to God for change. And we say, oh, God, I see myself for who I really am. I see myself as you see me, and something's got to change here. This isn't the way I want to be. This isn't the person that I want to be. So self-awareness is the truth about ourselves. And we don't always know the truth about ourselves. And here's the thing about that, is it's a lot easier to see it in somebody else. It's just easier for me to say, oh man, Josh doesn't see the truth about himself in this area of his life. I can see that. Josh has a harder time seeing that, just like I do. You may find it easier to see an area in my life where I'm not living in the truth about myself. But you can see it, but I can't, because I haven't had that moment of self-awareness with God. And so reflection, I think, is a huge purpose of the Sabbath as God gave it to us. And then the next piece is enjoying. Okay? Enjoying. The day is meant to celebrate the goodness of God. And so usually my Monday afternoons are very active. My Sunday night is quiet. My Monday morning is just at my own pace and moving into the day slowly and wonderfully. But the afternoons for enjoyment, it's okay to, I often ride my exercise bicycle and do self-care on a Monday afternoon. And it's a wonderful part of my Sabbath. Take a walk along the river is a wonderful way to do self-care and enjoy the Sabbath. It's just, so here's the deal, everybody. In that Psalm 139, God says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And even though we might have things in common with each other, we're all wired up a little bit differently. And the way that you connect with God on your Sabbath might be different than the way I connect with God on the Sabbath. I don't expect you to do what I do. I'm continuing to learn how God made me and wired me, and the best way for me to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy so that God can pour all of the blessing that He has built into Sabbath rest into my life. And I highly recommend to everybody, there's a book out there by a man by the name of Gary Thomas, and it's called Sacred Pathways. And it talks about how we are wired up for God. For instance, my dominant sacred pathway is being an ascetic, okay? Which means I need things slow and quiet in order to thrive, okay? The louder, the faster, the more chaotic my life is, the less I thrive. But you slow it down, you get it quiet, and then I can thrive. You might be the exact opposite of that. So I see a lot of that ascetic personality in how I keep the Sabbath holy and remember it. And a person who's wired up differently might do it a lot different than I do it, and still remember the Sabbath and keep it holy and get all of the blessings squeezed out of it, just like you get all the juice squeezed out of an orange. So here's the deal, everybody. Sabbath is a gift, not an obligation. Okay? God did not create the Sabbath to put an obligation on you. He created the Sabbath to give you a weekly gift. And I believe with all of my heart and soul and mind and strength that it is a gift to be received. And that if you will never get all of it, all out of it that God has in it for you until you receive it as a gift. If you look at it as an obligation, it's just going to be another day of work. It's just going to be a different kind of work. But if you see it as a gift, then then it takes on an entirely different context. And I got to tell you, the anticipation builds for me all throughout Sunday. I'm walking around Sunday morning, the Sabbath's coming. The church service ends and people have left the building. The Sabbath's coming. Go do my nursing home service. The Sabbath's coming. And it's just this building excitement throughout the day until you get home at 4 o'clock and you open up the gift and there's the Sabbath. There's your time of rest and reflection and feasting and celebrating that's ahead of you. Because God's just got to take care of everything. And He does. So, and again, everybody's context is a little bit different, but here's the best way that I've come up with to think of the Sabbath. When I was a little guy, lived in Arpin and went to school in Auburndale. And if you woke up if you went to bed the night before and the forecast was for a snowstorm, you hoped all night that they'd cancel school the next day.
I hear that.
And you'd get up in the morning and you'd turn on the radio and you'd wait for the school cancellations. And if you heard that the Auburndale Public School District was closed, you celebrated.
Yeah.
And you celebrated because you had the whole day as a gift free to yourself. You didn't have to get up and go to school and deal with everything that school entails. You didn't have homework that night. You didn't have any of that. The day lay before you as an open slate of play and fun and whatever it was that you could do. I was an only child, so I was on my own, whatever I came up with in my own mind and whatever I did. But Sabbath is a weekly snow day, okay? A weekly snow day where you put your obligations in the closet and you just can celebrate that you're a child of God and He's given you this gift of a day off. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful, wonderful thing. And so that's my testimony, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about my journey or whatever. Okay, Joshua.